sometimes being in your villain era literally means implementing boundaries and sort of acknowledging the shadow aspects of you and making amends with them. And I think that that's one of the most important parts of any sort of journey of self-betterment. Good. I was gonna say good morning, and it could be any time for you. So good whatever part of the day you're in, or night. If you hear those birds, by the way, they're just having a jolly old time. Let them be. I hope you are well, or as well as you possibly can be. It's your girl, Jasmine Kylene. I'm a spiritual counselor, I'm a journalist, I'm a girl with a bit of a raspy voice, and I think it's a COVID after effect. I don't know, my voice has never been the same ever since my second round of COVID. That's all I have to say on that. Yeah, I hope you are well. Ah! Sorry, there was something on me that I couldn't identify. Is it a spider? It's not, it has wings. Okay, well, I woke up today sad. I woke up today sad. I feel like oftentimes whenever I feel an emotion, I try to immediately identify and understand it, and I am working with the practice of witnessing emotion, not really attaching an immediate narrative to it, but rather just kind of letting it move through. I also think that like existing right now, we can be sort of accumulating so much emotion and energy because of, yeah, just like the constant stimulation that we have from existing. So I don't know, I think sometimes like certain emotions can live in our bones and like kind of be stuck in the body, and when we don't acknowledge it, they kind of like organically move through. And so maybe this sadness is from something I sort of witnessed or experienced 3 weeks ago that I haven't let move through me. So I'm just gonna let it move through. But I put on some mascara, I took a shower, I asked the water to cleanse me, I lit an incense, I'm gonna hang with friends today. I'm giving myself the medicine that I need, and I'm also turning on the camera and talking because I feel like sort of expelling words and expelling emotion while not putting it on another person can be very cathartic. So, and yeah, I wanted to talk about just an interesting little like perspective on something, and this video could be 3 minutes long, it could be 15, I don't really know how much I really have to say on this, but like, obviously, as a frequent TikToker, maybe too frequent, I lose a lot of my life to that app. But it doesn't feel as draining as Instagram, I will say. TikTok feels like a safe haven for me, but I spend so much time on TikTok, and I'm witnessing how like there's this kind of narrative going around of being in your villain era, and I am all for this, and I'm gonna tell you why. Obviously, from the lens of someone who like works in spiritual counseling, I don't think we realize that being in your villain era really equates to doing shadow healing. And so I'm gonna sort of give my experience of it and hope that it can kind of reflect your experience of it. But like on a large scale, I want to say that sometimes being in your villain era literally means implementing boundaries and sort of acknowledging the shadow aspects of you and making amends with them. And I think that that's one of the most important parts of any sort of journey of self-betterment. It is about sort of ridding yourself of the dark or disgusting parts of you in order to be this sort of enlightened being. Rather, sort of like witnessing what parts of you do you reject, where they stem from, why you reject them, where the conditioning comes from, and making amends with them, understanding that that's a part of you that lives within your body, and while it doesn't drive the car, it is in the passenger seat, and it's a voice that needs acknowledgement. And so, anyway, I want to share a shadow aspect with you guys and how I've sort of like reintroduced it into my life. Wow, did you just hear my shoulders crack? Wow, that's crazy. So something that is kind of like a reoccurring theme in my life is being called selfish. Like, I know that you may witness me online and think, wow, what a selfless being. What a being devoted to the betterment of others. I live very selfishly. There's no way to deny that. I am an Aquarius. I'm an only child. I have a Leo moon. Like, I'm very, like, a lot of my life is centered on immediately satisfying my needs. Not sort of consciously at the expense of others. I'm always like, if you tell me I need to be at a place at a time because there's, like, it'll affect you if I'm not at that place at that time, I will do absolutely everything in my power to make sure I'm at that place at that time. Like, I'm very respectful of other people's, I'm just respectful of other people, almost honestly to a point of people pleasing. Like, I'm growing out of a way of being that was very like chronic people pleaser. But I think that the way that I have built my life and the way that I build my days is what I guess society would deem as selfish, though I'm now realizing I just have healthy boundaries with myself. But yeah, I don't know, growing up, my mom would always call me selfish. Gave me the safest upbringing, so much love, so much safety, like just incredible mom to this day. But like, she would always let me know if I was doing something that would have been perceived as selfish. I remember that being a thing that kind of came up a lot in my childhood. And then recently she and I had a disagreement that had a lot to do with like me staying in Europe, where I was once again called selfish because I was choosing sort of my peace over something that could slightly inconvenience someone else. And yeah, so the word kind of reintroduced itself, or the label reintroduced itself into my orbit. And then I had an ex. I had an ex kind of like, yeah, just basically reflect on where and how things kind of ended with us and let me know the ways in which I was selfish and the way that I navigated us ending. And so like within the span of a week, I had two people who really kind of saw the core of me call me selfish. And I remember immediately being like, am I in my villain era? Because like I felt very, like in both situations, I recognized how I was inconveniencing or not taking the other person into account, but also how I was ultimately in radical and feral protection of my peace and my sovereignty and my joy. And there was no other route for me. There was no way that I was going to sort of forfeit any of that peace or joy for the sake of someone else. Whereas maybe an older version of me, or maybe the people-pleasing part of me, finds discomfort in that. But I think people-pleasing is also a shadow aspect, because people-pleasing is derivative of the fear of rejection, or yeah, just not being enough, a belief that you're not enough. And I think I'm really making amends with the fact that a lot of me is selfish, and I do want to pour more selflessness into the world. I do want to commit to being a more selfless being entirely. But I also think that like where I wore a lot of shame for being selfish, and I thought that I was like this really awful person, and I did my best to, I don't know, just be less selfish. I think that bled into me, once again, being a chronic people pleaser. And I'm finding that me being in my villain era, right? Me being or acting in ways and making decisions that others would deem selfish really is me upholding boundaries that, like I said, protect my peace and protect my joy. And I think that that in itself is shadow healing. Recognizing what aspect of you do you have shame about? Who is sort of defining that shame? Is it a societally defined shame? Does the shame come from within? Is your family telling you that you should be shameful about this thing? Like, where is this shame born from? And how can you integrate it into your life in a way that's healthy? Like I said, I think that being a certain level of selfish is crucial for any sort of like healthy ecosystem within the body. You have to make decisions that ultimately will put someone else in a situation where they're actually like, they'll grow from it. I think every person that experienced me being selfish is going to grow from the experience of me inconveniencing them. Whether they realize like, oh, I expected something of her that I needed to give myself, or oh, I wanted her to act in a way that kept me comfortable, instead of reflecting on how maybe that was selfish of me. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm speaking in very like general terms, and maybe this will land for nobody, but however your villain era is presenting to you, whether your villain era looks like you saying a lot more no's, or being a lot less fake nice in, you know, environments or in ecosystems that you don't actually feel safe in, like, it's so important that you recognize, you know, what shadow aspect is coming up here, and how can you make amends with it by recognizing the fact that it's part of our darkness, that we are just human. Like, we need that contrast. I think it's so beautiful to be selfless, but that needs to be complemented with acts of selfishness that ultimately are for your own safety and betterment and joy. If you being in your villain era means making a decision that, you know, isn't logical, or that society isn't comfortable with, but it makes you happy, I think sit with where that comes from. Sit with what part of you thinks that that's like a villainous thing to do in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, what are you contrasting by being in your villain era? Being a doormat, or being someone who overuses their no or overuses their yes? Like, where yeah, just I think really sit with the fact that you being in your villain era really is you being in your shadow integration era. And it's so important that we integrate our shadows, just as it's so important that we have our season of inner child healing, of sensual self healing, right, our sacral chakras, when we really connect and are led by our higher selves, which should be always, right, we should always be led by our higher selves, but allow ourselves to move through these phases where we witness and address our shadow aspects, our inner child wounds, all of those things. My mom just texted me. And yeah, like I said, just recognizing the fact that like everything is seasonal. And so wherever you're at in your season of self-betterment and becoming, if it's your villain era, it's crucial. It's crucial for the wholeness and the totality of you. So if you are in your villain era and you feel called to embark in your villain era, what I will say is look at the parts of you that you reject. What are the parts of, like I always rejected being selfish, and so there were a lot of years where I wasn't labeled that because I was because I was overtly selfish to the point where, like I said, time and time again, I was disrespecting my own boundaries by being a people pleaser. So it's funny that as my like path of spiritual healing and this journey that I'm on, as it's introduced me to my own truth and to what it means to live in like the largest and loudest and most authentic version of my truth, I'm making decisions that radically protect living in my truth and living in my joy and living in my peace. And funny how the word selfish is just somehow slithering back into my orbit, and it's just like, of course, like I think anytime, yeah, I don't know, I'm not gonna go in the same loop, but just I know that I rejected that label for a very long time because I was told it was a dirty part of me, and I'm making amends with it, recognizing that there should always be a limit with how selfish you are. I don't think it should be at the expense of everyone's like needs or safety. You shouldn't be violently selfish. But if your selfishness really is just you being devoted to you, sit with why society has told you that that's dirty. Sit with any part of you that you've rejected that society has told you that you are dirty, and find a way to integrate it back into your way of being that's healthy. And this can mean, you know, maybe that you are someone who's too emotional. Maybe your villain era is that you're like, I'm gonna cry at any given point that I see and deem fit because you guys have told me that this is a part of me that I should be ashamed about. You being in your villain era means you know, sort of ending relationships without so much energy or explanation as to why. It can be answering the phone less. It could be, like I said, being maybe a little bit meaner. Like obviously, I'm actually coming to like my spiritual healing channel and being like, I think you should be meaner. But like sometimes when your niceness is feigned for the sake of everyone else's comfort, to the point where everyone can kind of see it as an opportunity to take advantage of you because of how nice you're always going to receive them no matter what, I think it's important that you are a little mean and you are a little stern and you are a little bit more rough with the way that you allow access to you. So I think, I just really witness what's coming up as you are in your villain era, and witness what parts of you are they representing, and what's your relationship with those. Who and what has programmed you to think that those are things you should reject, and how can you sort of reintegrate it into your body in a way that's honest, in a way that's healthy, and in a way that just honors you and honors your truth. In conclusion, your villain era could be your shadow integration era, and what a fun thing to sit with. So I would definitely journal on this. If I were you, a beautiful prompt is just like, what aspects of me are coming up in my villain era, and you know, what situation, what person, what circumstance taught me it was something to be ashamed of. And obviously the next one could be, how can I reintegrate it into my way of being in a way that's healthy, in a way that honors balance and honors our duality, right? Like we're yin and yang, we're masculine and we're feminine. How can I let my darkness complement my light and make sure that, you know, me being selfish doesn't outweigh me being selfless, but me being selfless still gives permission for me to be selfish when I need to be. I hope that made sense. I hope that in some way, shape, or form that like resonated or landed or invited you to look deeper into you. But I feel better already. I just feel like I needed to talk. Sometimes, you know, words are emotions and you just gotta let them move through. I'm gonna go live a day that's dedicated to my joy and my peace, because that's my selfish way of living, babe. And I'm sending you all my love. If you want to connect with me, you can do so by following me on Instagram at Jasmine Kylene, booking a one-on-one at jasminekylene.com, or subscribing for more of me talking. Okay, bye.